Hi, welcome to our studio, Social Learning. So this semester, we'll be designing schools and investigating the relationship between spatial organization and the social character of spaces. We will be studying the connections between the way spaces are organized and configured in plan and section, seen here in the plan of St. Xavier's Primary School by Hasmukh Patel, and how such spaces are used, whether they're lively or quiet, why some spaces are good for concentrated work, why some rooms are almost always empty, and why other spaces are invariably full of activity. The physical and visual connections between spaces in plan and section affect how we use space. These relationships are ultimately behind why you choose to study in the library and socialize in the studio. They're behind why markets emerge at crossroads, like Manik Chowk, seen here, or why on the roof terrace of a public building, which is the furthest point from the entrance, you will almost always be alone. By understanding this relationship between organization and spatial character, we will be able to ask important questions about what a school should be. The briefs for the schools you design will have pedagogical and social agendas, as well as functions. We will ask, why do Montessori schools feel and operate differently to traditional schools? Are more open, lively, and social spaces always best for all children? How do we provide spaces for introverts? And how, in the current time of pandemic, can we create a sense of community while enabling the social distancing necessary for schools to function? Well, the preceding slides showed the arrangement of furniture, showed how the arrangement of furniture in classrooms affects the degree of informality of use. The same principle applies to the arrangement of spaces within the building. The connection between furniture and use is somewhat intuitive, as can be seen from the images. But in complex buildings, the effects of organization can be harder to predict. So we will be learning to use methods of analysis and software developed by Space Syntax at the Bartlett School of Architecture, UCL, to uncover hidden patterns which influence how spaces function. This analysis can be used to design buildings that meet a client's social ambitions through an iterative process of creative speculation, testing and analysis, and adjustment.
In order to analyze spatial configuration, we need to have a method of denoting the relationship between spaces. In these diagrams, as you can see, there is the same plan with varying locations for entrances, and in each case, the movement possibilities are varying. In this example of the School of Architecture building, we notice how a newly added entrance, though it seems like a spatially small intervention, has significantly changed the social use or the social dynamic of the space. Where earlier the first year studio was a dead end space, it now suddenly became accessible from two different points. What this meant was that it's now possible for you to sneak into the studio without being noticed by the professor when you're late for a lecture. Similarly, the ground modulation in different parts of the campus facilitate gathering of various sizes of groups based on the extent of visual privacy afforded by them. We can simulate such things, for instance, and test them out in this agent-based model. As a cell gets more frequented by the agents, the cell's value increases, and it therefore turns increasingly yellow or orange or red from blue or green. So this example worked out on an apartment will give you an idea of what the software can tell us. Here is a standard layout of an apartment where you have 3 bedrooms at 3 different corners of the layout and a living space more or less spread out across the center. The nodes and their connections then show us how one can traverse between the spaces from one space to the next. By analyzing the graphs of relationships, we can get a measure showing us how deep each space is from all other spaces. And this then gives us an integration value. So as we can see, how integrated each space is in the overall layout reveals that the 3 bedrooms vary significantly. The bedroom number 1 and 2, which have buffer spaces before their entrance, seem a lot more private and segregated as compared to bedroom number 3, which is adjacent to the living space. Analyzing in a finer grain of detail, each unit of space has a visual connectivity value, which explains even more about the social character and usage of the space. So the most integrated, that is the red cells on the plan, tend to be maintained as neat and presentable parts of the house, usually viewed by guests. Whereas the dark blue areas, which are less visible, tend to have an everydayness about them and often get cluttered and a little bit messy. This is visible in the photographs that you see here. On the left-hand side, you have the neater parts owing to their higher visibility. And on the right-hand side, you have the parts which are relatively secluded and the material culture there reflects the same. So in such a small system, the findings might have been rather obvious, but in a larger system like a school, these methods can give valuable design insights. A lot about the character of a building often depends on the movement possibilities it affords. And therefore, it's useful to study these typologies of spatial organization. What we see here is a tree-like structure of spatial layout in the plan. This is a plan of a school building where the central spine of circulation branches out into various classroom spaces. A space syntax analysis of such a layout would allow us to understand whether the long corridor in the center of the plan would be busy or quiet, and which of the 3 outdoor spaces that are carved out would tend to get most frequented, most used. In another plan, which is of the type that has loops, this plan has multiple movement possibilities. One can traverse the spaces in many ways and enter the same room from different entrances. A space syntax analysis of such a plan could reveal whether the overall layout tends to be controlling or whether it tends to be open and playful.
So we are interested in speculation. In the imagining of new models to help schools achieve their social aims. We're also interested in testing our assumptions, creating buildings for different types of social learning. Thank you.
Thank you. So I am Freyaan Anklesaria. Along with me is Catherine Desai and Abhishek Thakai. We are looking to select students who demonstrate their keen interest in the subject at hand, rather than any prerequisite skills. We look forward to answering any questions that you might have in the session for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.